Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this the Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And thankfully, for once, there is something to be white-pilled about over here in Britain. Because this is a group that I have had a vendetta against, and a man that I think I have genuinely hated on both a personal and professional level for some time, and he's finally getting his just comeuppance. Ministers back record 5-year jail term for Just Stop Oil founder. Luke Pollard, the Armed Forces Minister, welcomed the strong message as Roger Hallam was handed the longest sentence yet for non-violent protest. Yes, the champagne bottles were all going off in the Gláeddyv household this weekend. Roger Hallam, the founder of the group, received the longest ever jail sentence for non-violent protest under laws designed to crack down on public disruption. He was jailed for 5 years for coordinating the protest that disrupted the M25 in London over 4 days in 2022. 45 protesters climbed gantries on the motorway, forcing police to stop the traffic. Daniel Shaw, 38 from Nottingham, Lucia Whitaker, Abru, oh my god, that is such a upper middle class name, that is unbelievable. 35 from Derby, Louise Lancaster, 58 from Cambridge, and Cressida Gethin, 22 from Hereford, were each sentenced to 4 years for being found guilty of conspiring to cause a public nuisance. Excellent news. Absolutely excellent news. We cannot let these people get away with this nonsense. Again, it's a shame that Rishi Sunak panicked about reform and called for the early election, because things like this will have been seen as very good from their end. Oh, one of the laws you brought in actually did something to stop the public nuisances. Excellent news. Yes, I will vote for you. To be fair, that will probably be overshadowed by the fact that the Rwanda flights probably weren't going to head out, but whatever. The sentences handed down at Southwark Crown Court in London were longer than those given to Just Stop Oil activists who scaled the Queen Elizabeth II Bridge over Dartford Crossing in October 2022. They were condemned as a gross miscarriage of justice by environmental campaigners. Don't worry, we'll get into that. The group was sentenced under the controversial legislation introduced by the previous government to get tougher on disruptive tactics used by environmental protesters, including blocking roads and attacks on sporting events. A 13-week campaign by Just Stop Oil last summer cost the Metropolitan Police more than £7.7 million, the equivalent cost of 23,500 officers a shift. Amazing. And this legislation was backed by Keir Starmer, though opposed by the United Nations, which once again goes to show that international institutions mean absolutely nothing to Parliament, so thank God we got out the EU, etc, etc. Anyway, because I am going to absolutely love revelling in everything about this story, we are now going to have a quick look at the sentencing remarks, because it's going to be quite important when we go through the protests from Just Stop Oil and other celebrities that think that this is absolutely ridiculous. It's not, by the way. I have sentenced all 5 of you for the offence of conspiring intentionally to cause a public nuisance, of which you were each convicted by jury following a trial which concluded a week ago. The conspiracy in question involved a sophisticated plan to disrupt traffic on the M25 motorway by means of protesters climbing up the gantries over the motorway. The conspiracy bore fruit. There was disruption on the M25 for 4 successive days. From 7 to 10 November 2022, over 45 protesters climbed or attempted to climb up the gantries at various points on the M25. Every sector of this orbital motorway was affected. So just to be absolutely clear, they were put before a jury of their peers, and they were told they were found guilty of conspiring to cause a public nuisance and therefore got this sentencing. Absolutely no way they can deny this. In fact, I believe in court they didn't even deny it. At the trial, the jury heard evidence quantifying the huge disruption caused. The total road impact time over the 4 days was 121 hours and 45 minutes. Oh my god. The total extent of delay to road users is calculated to 50,856 hours, and the number of affected vehicles at 708,523. That is unbelievable, really. The total economic cost of the 4 days of disruption is put at £769,966. I don't even know how they quantify that, but still, that is quite mad for 4 days. Cost incurred by the Metropolitan Police alone, 5 other forces were involved, given the geography of the M25, was over £1 million. Now, the reason that they quantify this into financial terms is so that they can basically compare it to crimes of criminal damage. Effectively, what these people have done is caused at least £1.77 million worth of damage. due to their non-violent protest, which is what their main defence always is. Oh, it was non-violent, as if you still can't cause damage by not being violent. The jury also heard evidence of the impact of the protests on ordinary members of the public who were travelling on the M25 on the days in question and became caught up in the disruption. That included evidence about people who missed flights, people who missed funerals, school students delayed for all their mock exams, already all pretty bad to be quite honest with you, a child with special needs on his way to school who missed part of the school day and his medication, which placed the taxi driver driving him there at risk, as the child could become volatile without his medication. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty bad. Other school students with special educational needs being delayed on their way to school, again, can become quite volatile. Somebody suffering an aggressive form of cancer who missed an appointment at a cancer clinic and had to wait 2 months for a further appointment. That alone, screw him. They can rot in jail for that alone. Roger Hallam has openly said on podcasts before, I mean, this literally killed a podcast series on episode 1, because he effectively said that I hope someone in an ambulance does die as a result of one of their protests because it gets people talking about them. Basically, he thinks because they're non-violent, any publicity is good publicity. I mean, this is good publicity because it means that it looks like the government are doing their job. Congratulations, Roger, you're making me miss a Tory government. There was further evidence of people who were late to work and had to work extra hours without pay to make up for the time. Screw them for that alone as well. An HGV driver unable to deliver £5,000 worth of food to a hospital. Perhaps ironically given the causes, you suppose. An individual invited to answer questions at the House of Lords before an all-party parliamentary group for water who was unable to attend the meeting and incurred wasted expenses. That's quite a funny one to finish up on, to be honest. They disrupted people actually getting to places of power to further their cause. Well done. And there were no major road traffic accidents, though one police motorist had to miss a few days of work due to minor injuries, and also total his motorcycle, which was worth £13,000. So, to make it quite clear, clearly there were major damages here. Major. I mean, already the judge said that this cost well over £1.5 million, and then these individual cases of disruption, it just makes everything worse. I'm glad they're in jail. Next, evidence was shown to the jury about the Zoom call that they were all on. The Zoom call recording also reveals how deeply involved in the conspiracy each of you was. You 5 were the people who spoke on that Zoom call because each of you was a key organiser of what was to come. The Zoom call came to light because of Scarlett Howes, a journalist on the Sun newspaper who joined the call pretending to be somebody interested in participating in the protest. She was able to record the main part of the meeting. She left at the point where the participants went into breakout rooms, and what she had recorded was passed the police. Honestly, that is hero journalism. Thank you very much, Scarlett Howes. You deserve whatever prizes we give to journalists in the UK and a raise. It was clear at the trial that none of you think very much of the Sun newspaper or of its proprietor. I make no comment about this, but what I do say is that Ms. Howes and her newspaper did entirely the right thing by passing on the evidence she had gathered to the police. Yes, absolutely. Well done, Scarlett Howes, and well done, The Sun. You can make all your memes about being a bootlicker and all that. This is exactly what you should do, because it has saved us from further major disruption, which is exactly what the law was put in place for and exactly what people want. Thank you very much. The summary of each individual's contribution to the Zoom call were as follows. Roger Hallam, you gave what might be described as quite a lengthy pep talk to those on the call, explaining why participation in the planned protest was necessary and justified. That sounds exactly like Roger Hallam. But what you said revealed firstly that you were at the very heart of the planning, and secondly just how far the disruption was intended to go, and I will come back to that. Daniel Shaw, you chaired the meeting, and what you said showed that you were intimately involved in organising and recruiting and training of the protesters. Louise Lancaster, Lucia Whitaker de Aubrey, and Cressida Gethin, the women, your role was to inspire would-be climbers of the gantries by describing your own previous experience of similar direct action protests. And in what you said, each of you also revealed your familiarity with the detail of what was planned and your enthusiasm for it. In other words, you were caught red-handed, conspiring and even planning a major public nuisance. You deserve jail time. Interestingly, in these notes, it mentions that because this is a relatively new offence on the books, obviously there is no sentencing guidelines. However, the judge does go into detail of a relatively recent conviction of a similar disruption, which is of the Trowland and Decker disruption of the Dartford Bridge. In an appeal on their sentencing, it is mentioned that they disrupted the Dartford Bridge, which carries the river M25 over the Thames estuary between Kent and Essex, for 36 hours. The appeal court conducted comprehensive review of the relative domestic and European sentencing jurisprudence, which makes it unnecessary for me to refer to any other cases. In other words, because your crime was so similar to this one, I can just use that as a sentencing guideline. The appeal court found the sentences of 3 years and 2 years and 9 months imprisonment imposed on the two appealants following conviction in the Crown Court to be severe but not manifestly excessive or disproportionate. In other words, a few years in jail is probably not too much for these conspirers, and increasing that obviously to 4 and 5 years is not manifestly excessive or disproportionate, but is severe, which is what you want to do when you are making an example out of people, which is pretty much what the sentencing judge says in paragraphs 27 and 28. These sentencing notes get so much funnier when you actually get to the detail of why these people have been given their sentences. Roger Hallam, you have a substantial criminal record for offences committed in the context of direct action protest. You were convicted on 2 occasions as a young man in 1987 and 1988. Between 2017 and this year, you have amassed a further 11 such convictions, most recently in February 2024 at Isleworth Crown Court, when, for an offence of conspiracy to cause a public nuisance, you received a suspended sentence order that involved a plan to disrupt operations at Heathrow by the use of drones. I will cancel the community requirements of that sentence. During your evidence, you described yourself to the jury as the most influential environmentalist in the country apart from Sir David Attenborough. Which, to be honest with him, I reckon he's actually more influential than Sir David Attenborough. Sir David Attenborough didn't manage to get millions of people out over the course of a few years to just completely block public highways. I fear you might have got a bit carried away at that point, but you are clearly a highly influential figure within Just Stop Oil and similarly minded groups. Now, to be fair to him, I think he's right. In fact, no, I think he's wrong. I think he's more influential than Sir David Attenborough. So far as this conspiracy is concerned, you were the theoretician, the ideas man. It is significant that it was you, as opposed to anyone else, who came onto the Zoom call to inspire the troops and would-be troops. You may have been there to provide the theory, but as the Zoom call showed, you were intimately involved in the practice too. You are in the most serious position of all the defendants because, in my judgment, you sat at the very highest level of the conspiracy. You had obtained the mathematical model for motorway disruption to which you referred to in the Zoom call, and it was you who was supervising its implementation. My God, what a nerd. I have listened with care to Ms. O'Brien's submissions on your part and have read the 4 character references supplied. I'm afraid I am unable to detect any real personal mitigation in your case. You are somebody who has chosen to devote his life to disruptive direct action campaigning. Yeah, he's written whole books of it. He has a whole YouTube channel about it. In particular, I cannot accept the suggestion that you have now consciously desisted from direct action protests and so present no risk of further offending. Well, yeah, that is obviously nonsense. His entire shtick was he failed as an organic farmer, blamed it on climate change despite being the only failed organic farmer that year, decided to do a PhD in, I can't even remember what his PhD was in, but I think it was in civil disobedience, and then decided, I am going to mathematically find the best way to win. And he's basically won, by the way, because Ed Miliband's come in, banned all North Sea oil exploration, or further licences of it, which is probably going to take the government to court, by the way, because obviously Rishi Sunak promised them the licences, and now they're rescinding on it. They're losing millions from obviously all the business plans they've made for it, etc., etc. Not getting into that now. And there is absolutely no way that Roger Hallam is not going to try and make further disruptions. It's just not true. Your conduct during the trial, where you and 3 of your co-defendants set about turning the proceedings themselves into a direct action protest, compels me to reject such a submission. What he means by that is that during the trial, for their defence, they effectively tried to use it as an opportunity to obviously say the planet's burning, if you send us to jail, you're sending truth-sayers to jail, people that are trying to save your lives, things like that. Effectively, they were trying to make themselves heroes during the trial instead of defending themselves, so the judge just threw that out. I stress again that your conduct during the trial does not add a single day to your sentence, but it deprives you of any mitigation based on the suggestions that you're a changed man. He got 5 years. Daniel Shaw, you had one previous conviction for causing public nuisance. The offence was committed in 2021 and you received a community order in 2023. I will revoke that order, but will not resentence you for the original offence. You are up to your neck in the organisation of this conspiracy, and in particular the recruitment and training of protesters. You are happy to recruit and send out others to cause what you hoped would be massive disruption, with all the risks involved. For the same reason I have indicated in Roger Hallam's case, your conduct during the trial deprived you of any mitigation based on the potential for rehabilitation in your case. In other words, he tried the same thing as Roger Hallam by saying, this was necessary because I'm saving all your lives, and the judge just threw that out because it's not a defence. Having said that, that did work with the Colston statue tear-downers, so I can see why they tried it. These notes get worse, by the way. I bear in mind what I've heard about your personal circumstances, and in particular your caring responsibilities. I have read with care the character references provided in your case, and which set out the caring position in detail. It is a great pity that by choosing to involve yourself in offending of this seriousness, you have put people close to you who are innocent of any wrongdoing in a difficult position, but that cannot deflect me from my duty to pass a sentence which reflects the seriousness of your offending. In other words, nothing is mitigating the 4 years that you are getting given, because unfortunately, I have to make an example of the leaders. And it's not the judge's fault that you put people that you care for, apparently, in the position where they now have to find other arrangements for being cared for. Because, frankly, you are a selfish criminal moron. Lucia Whitaker de Abreu, I don't care if I'm saying that right or wrong. You have 3 previous convictions for offensive obstruction during direct action protests. You were fined on each occasion. I've listened with care to everything said on your behalf by Mr. Chadder. I bear in mind what I've seen and heard about your health and caring responsibilities, but that provides little in way of mitigation, given your conscious choice to engage in offending of this seriousness. Again, she got 4 years. I really like this sentencing judge. He's doing the right thing. The kind of subtext of all this is, I understand you have caring responsibilities. I think you are just trying to use that for my sympathy. I don't believe you. You are being given a severe sentence that doesn't really go outside the purview of similar cases. Louise Lancaster, you have 6 previous convictions for offences committed in the course of direct action protest. Most recently you were convicted at Inner London Crown Court in June 2023 and at Lewes Crown Court in November 2023 for separate offences committed in 2021. At Inner London Crown Court you received 5 weeks imprisonment and at Lewes a suspended sentence order. I will cancel the community requirements of that order. In addition to this offence was committed during the currency of a short suspended sentence order imposed by the High Court only a month or so before this offending. That suspended sentence order was imposed because you have breached a High Court injunction by climbing a gantry over the M25 in July 2022. My God, this person is begging to be put in jail. You referred to this in the Zoom call, and this was the reason why your involvement in the conspiracy did not extend to going onto the gantry yourself, but your involvement was substantial. As I have already indicated, not only did you provide inspiration and guidance to those who were to follow in your footsteps, but you had a key role in relation to the safe house and the purchase of equipment for the climbers. Oh my God, there were safe houses. I take no action in relation to the breach, but it is an aggravating feature in your particular offending. You delivered your own mitigation, which was more in the character of a speech about your motivations than the identification of any mitigating features of your case. Once again, it was probably a case of, the planet is burning, I needed to do this, please don't put me in jail, rather than actually trying to say, I have a low IQ, you can't put me in jail for that. And in truth, there is no real personal mitigation in your case, but to your credit, you did acknowledge the harm caused to others by the conspiracy of which you have been convicted. She got 4 years. Finally, Cressida Gethin, you have 3 previous convictions for offences committed during the direct action protest. Most recently, in February 2024, at Alworth Crown Court, you received a suspended sentence order for a substantive offence of public nuisance relating to protest disruption on the M25. I will cancel the community requirements of that order. Your conviction here also places you in breach of a conditional discharge imposed in September 2022. That is a separate aggravating feature, but I am not going to resentence you for the original offence. again, this is definitely a tough but fair judge. I am enjoying these notes, very much so. Hence, I'm going through them for a quarter of an hour. I have read with care the character references provided to me and also the material in respect of your health. All of it has been unloaded in the sentencing section of the digital case file. You are by far the youngest of the defendants at 22, but I do not regard your relative youth as providing any mitigation or entitling you to a different treatment from your co-defendants. Excellent. 22 makes you an adult. You should be tried the same as the 58-year-old. As the character evidence indicates, and as I learned for myself during the trial, you are a highly intelligent and well-educated young woman. Neither immaturity nor personal disadvantage has driven you to crime, as honestly I think it rarely ever does. Your own conscious choices have. So far as your health is concerned, as you frankly accepted in your skillfully delivered mitigation, it cannot reduce your culpability. I am satisfied that your health issues can be adequately managed in custody. I don't know what her health issues are, but once again, the judge seems to understand that pretty much everything put forward for mitigation by these people is effectively nonsense. It's just there to try and garner sympathy, and I'm glad this judge has absolutely none for them. And so, once again, Cressida gets 4 years. And so now if you ever see on Twitter someone saying, oh, these people were just put in jail for a Zoom call, you now have someone effectively just reading out for 20 minutes the actual reasons they were put in jail. It's because they all have previous convictions. It's because they cost over £1.7 million of disruptive damages. And it's because then they were very cynical and tried to use the court as a platform to try and push their agenda further. It is absolutely reasonable that they were put in jail for the amount of time that they were. However, now over to Twitter, Just Stop Oil had some interesting things to say about the sentencing. The Whole Truth 5, which is what they are calling these 5 people, have been imprisoned for 4 to 5 years. Obviously, we went through the sentencings there, and they are trying to get people to sign a petition to get them released. According to Just Stop Oil, they were arrested after being on a Zoom call discussing non-violent civil resistance, which a Sun journalist infiltrated. Get absolutely bamboozled by the Sun, you absolute clowns. But this is the story that absolutely everyone in the left is going with. Oh, they were just on a Zoom call. Yeah, they were on suspended sentences as well. They could literally not be involved in public nuisances in the future, and they all got involved in a public nuisance. Yes, they deserve the jail time. Anyway, there's further nonsense in that thread, but I'm not going to bother wasting your time with it. Interestingly, though, there has obviously been wider consequences for this, or potential consequences. The police fear Just Stop Oil jail sentences will spark more protests. The record term for Roger Hallam could serve as a rallying call, saying the detective who led the investigation into his plot to bring the M25 to a standstill. Well, I hope Labour builds more jail places then, and doesn't just release people instead. There's not much more information in the article, it is literally just the detective saying this could be a rallying cry. But there was also a letter sent to the Attorney General. More than 1,100 people signed, including Rowan Williams, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, cringe, Sir Geoffrey Bindman KC, one of the country's most distinguished human rights lawyers, well, take his KC off him, the artist Dame Tracy Emin, literally don't know who that is, and echoed the call by Vince and Packham, being the 2 main people who were trying to defend the idiots who went to jail, both professional environmental activists. The letter, which also signed by Sir David King, the former Chief Scientific Advisor, says everything really, Chris Martin, the Coldplay frontman, don't care, Sir Philip Pullman, the author of his Dark Materials trilogy, what an idiot, described the sentencing as one of the greatest injustices in a British court in modern history. Don't know about that. We've definitely put people to death that were found to be innocent later on, and Alan Turing was effectively forced to transition for being found to be gay, so don't know about that. Other signatories included Packham, the celebrity chef Hugh Furling Whittingstall, Toby Jones, the star of Mr. Bates vs. the Post Office, and The Detectorist, which is a great show, Danny Boyle, the train spotting director, Lord Cashman, the actor and LGBT campaigner, and Annie Lennox, the singer and activist. Yeah, basically a bunch of people that I am not surprised are lovey lefty, won't do anything to actually help anyone, but will sign a letter to say, a bit harsh to send them to jail though, isn't it? Armchair celebrity activists, I think we can call them. People who have too much money in the bank and too much riding on their career to actually bother to put their, quite literally, money where their mouth is. The letter says, with prisons at breaking point and the new government acting urgently to address this, how can these sentences be seen as anything other than insanity? I do agree with that. We should definitely build more prisons. The sentences ranging from 4 to 5 years are higher than those given to many who commit serious sexual assault, the letter says. Yeah, typically the way that they mess around with those statistics is that they are very low-level sexual assaults, and they are typically from people who have never had a conviction before. Again, all of these people had multiple previous convictions, and a lot of them were on suspended sentences. That's why they all got the years that they did. The defendants were denied the right to explain to a jury why they took the action they did, making a mockery of the right to a fair trial. No, a trial is not a place just to put a soapbox on and try and give your doomsday soothsaying speeches. They were absolutely given a fair trial, and the jury was absolutely happy with it and found them all guilty, with the judge saying that the Crown prosecution's agreed facts on climate collapse, including the world has gone beyond the 1.5 degree for 12 consecutive months, were neither here nor there. Yeah, it's completely unrelated to the crime. And even so, then it's too late. It's too late. The world's going to end now, so why are you bothering? The letter says that the 5 activists were fulfilling a necessary service by alerting the nation to the grave risk we all face, with scientists expressing fears that the Earth is already at breaking point. The world stands at a crossroads, and so does our democracy. We write in support of Chris Packham and Dale Vince's request for an urgent meeting with you to be recorded so it's transparent to the public. My God, I hope that actually happens. To discuss the jailing of the truth tellers and their silencing in court, the letter concludes. Pure cringe, absolutely unsurprising that this is the way they are going with it, and already they are trying to spin the narrative of, oh, they're just telling the truth. Why are you putting them in jail? I mean, if Hitler was telling the truth, would he be alright with doing what he did? I don't think so. Anyway, as this sentencing was going on, there were multiple celebrities and even MPs outside of the court making their voices heard and letting it be known that they disapprove of criminals going to jail. Chris Packham, who even made a mainstream Channel 4 show effectively encouraging people to break the law for his pet project, was obviously demanding a recorded meeting with the new Attorney General to address this grotesque miscarriage of justice. Again, I sincerely hope that happens. Hugh Furling-Whittingstall, generally one of my favourite celebrity chefs, said, in this society we cannot put people behind bars who have simply urged us to do what we know in our hearts is the right thing to do. No, I don't think it's the right thing to do to disrupt food getting to hospitals. No, I don't think it's the right thing to do to stop children getting to school, especially if they've got special needs. No, I don't think it's right to stop people going about their lawful business, and honestly, with the complete slowdown of traffic and all those engines running idle, probably actually emitted more carbon dioxide than would have been done that day. Clive Lewis, the MP who had to retake his oath because he did it initially under protest and got mogged and had to do it again not under protest, sent out a tweet with his speech saying the climate crisis is a class issue. We can't get away from that. True, it is a class issue. It's making it a hell of a lot more expensive for working class people to get on with their lives with all the extra tax and green levies they have to pay for, you know, committing the crime of driving a car. In this speech outside Southwark Crown Court, after the imprisonment of 5 peaceful environmental defenders, I explain why. And yes, I have purposefully shown you this screenshot when he's going on about corporate wealth. Because these climate cultists, they're never really talking about the climate crisis. It is just a front for socialism. I'd like to point out at this point that each of these celebrities and MPs are worth well over £3 million each. They are definitely in the category of the rich. Next, the mother of Cressida, the youngest of the jailed activists, was doing a speech who said, our politicians, our judiciary and our energy companies should be shocked and deeply embarrassed with how the court has dispensed its version of justice today. Also in a speech she said this.
And she has just been sentenced today to 4 years in prison. This means she will not be present at her brother's wedding next summer.
Which, if that's the first thing you bring up as the kind of, oh, have sympathy for her, I am just going to make jokes about you. Good, I'm glad she's missing her brother's wedding. Hopefully she'll realise that she needs to actually behave as an adult now. But to be honest, it quickly turns quite sad.
She worked hard growing up. She achieved highly. She has ambitions, dreams and hopes, like all young people.
Yeah, and she completely wastes her life. She's going to genuinely struggle to find a job because her jail sentence and her convictions are going to come up in DBS checks. Amazingly, the mother then goes on to try and defend her actions by bringing up that the Earth is ending and things like that. But honestly, if that's your reaction to your daughter going to jail, I genuinely just think you're a bad mother. How dare you encourage her to commit crime? You did not do your job as a parent properly. You helped to ruin her life, I'm afraid. So, well done. Anyway, Roger Hallam's daughter turned up too. She said he is a person, someone who deserves respect, decency, and to be treated as a fully alive human being, someone who has dedicated their life to protecting this earth and her people. No, he is a socialist. I know he's a socialist because I read what he writes and I listen to what he has to say. He absolutely screwed up his chances of being an organic farmer. Nothing to do with the climate, by the way. It's just because he is bad at farming and he made it everyone else's problem. Your father, I'm afraid, is a total selfish scumbag and he deserves longer than 5 years in jail, to be quite honest with you. When he comes out, I have no doubt that he will carry on his activism and I hope he gets life. So that's all the people who are going on about this sentencing and the environment. And for some goddamn reason, I say for some goddamn reason, because according to Niemitz's law, basically every vaguely left-wing institutional pressure group will eventually amalgamate into just a we support absolutely that is generally left-wing. So Palestine Action co-founder Huda Amor expresses concerns over how Palestine actionists are also being treated in UK courts. Elbit Systems is building weapons across this country where they market as battle-tested, tested on captive population of Gaza. Over the past few years, there have been a coherent effort by the state and by the courts to take away our voices in this so-called courtroom of justice. You could even say they have been conspiring together to silence us all. It's just crazy how this always happens. 5 people have been put away for, their non-violent protest, but their huge disruption for the climate crisis, as they call it, the climate emergency, whatever they want to call it, despite the fact that they keep pushing the boundaries for what counts as far too late to do anything about it. But anyway, ignoring that part, you have come along and said, oh, but please think about these Palestinian voices that are being affected by this too. Who's been jailed who is a Palestinian activist for being a public nuisance? Because I barely know anyone. But I know plenty of people that I've seen on videos who should absolutely be in jail for being directly disruptive. The people who climb on statues, the people that set off fireworks, the people who stalked and followed MPs. There have been plenty, and intimidated, by the way. There are plenty of people who should be in jail, and it doesn't seem to be happening, or at least making mainstream news. Right, anyway, just before I finish, there is one more, hopefully future white pill we're going to get. Just Stop Oil activist damaged antique frame with Van Gogh's sunflower soup stunt at National Gallery. Just Stop Oil activists on trial accused of damaging an antique frame around Van Gogh's sunflowers with their soup protest. Obviously, the damage to the frame is not the white pill, but this is the potential one. Soup throwers on trial. Phoebe and Anna are on trial at Southwark Crown Court this week after throwing a can of soup over Van Gogh's sunflowers in 2022. The judge is Judge He here, who sentenced the Whole Truth 5 to 4 to 5 years in prison last week. So it's the same judge who is hopefully going to jail these two as well. For damage to the antique frame, I hope it's life, but realistically you're looking at probably a year or 2 in jail. And it's going to be fully deserved, and we have to get rid of this professional activist class. Jailing the actual activists is a good start, but you need to, frankly, defund the people who are managing to fund these people, because it's just getting ridiculous. Anyway, as I say, thank God these people are finally getting their comeuppance. Thank God they are getting severe sentences for the major disruption they are causing. Thank God even the Labour front benches are supporting these sentences. And honestly, it's a good thing that the backbenchers are actually against it too, because that means that Labour are probably going to end up having quite the civil war. I expect plenty more white pills coming from convictions of these complete fanatical morons. And it's just something that I largely welcome. And I largely welcome the inevitable civil war that will come into Labour, as the backbenchers clearly don't think that it's a good idea, because they're mental. Right, anyway, with that, that is everything I had for you today. So, I suppose I should shill first. Tonight we have the Other Side of the Hill newscast, covering stories such as Donald Trump nearly being assassinated, Joe Biden probably being dead, Labour having internal issues and basically having to admit that Liz Truss was right, Plenty more things like that. No regional variations tomorrow again. However, it's being replaced with a Tosh Talks, where Jack is carrying on his history of 19th century British foreign policy. We will be mainly covering Germany. And then that's it for streams, so expect plenty more videos from me too. Now with that, that is everything we had for you today. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.